All right, we are going to get started. So for all of you that are here, if you're here for Drupal 8 translation, a live demo, you're in the right spot. If you're not here for that, I won't be offended if you leave. Nobody's leaving, that's good. It's a good sign. So we're going to get started, and we're going to go through this kind of rapidly because typically this is an hour-long talk. I got to kind of fit it into 40 minutes so you guys have some time for some questions and answers. So turn the thing on. There we go. Things work better that way. So who am I, and who do I work for? Well, my name is John Picozzi. I'm the senior Drupal architect at Think. We are a Providence-based full-service web agency building predominantly Drupal websites. We do some WordPress work for industries such as healthcare, education, and industries like one of our bigger clients develops laser measuring devices, for example. I'm a co-organizer of the New England Drupal Camp, also a co-podcaster on the Talking Drupal podcast, and organizer of the Drupal Providence meetup. Enough about me. What are we doing here? So based on the talk, you've kind of figured out that you're in for some Drupal 8 translation. Specifically, what we're doing is I'm going to be doing a live demo of the Drupal 8 translation system, taking you from setting up a local environment, which we're going to do very quickly, through basic Drupal translation, what's built into core, and then we're actually going to integrate with Lingotek for translation, sending our words up to Lingotek, having them translated, and then brought back down into the site. And I'll show you how that whole system works. How are we going to be doing this? We're going to be using a pretty specific set of technologies. We're going to be using Composer. We're also going to be using MAMP for a local environment. You could use Vagrant or Drupal VM if that you have those, you prefer those. I see a Doxel sticker over there, so you could use that for your local environment if you wanted to. We are going to be using Composer to get all of our dependencies. We're going to be using the Drupal Composer Drupal project as kind of our base. If you've never checked that out, it's pretty full-featured base Drupal installation. I think Drupal VM actually uses that, but definitely check it out. It's very, very helpful. And of course, we're going to be using Drupal 8.5. We're also going to be using a couple of modules. We're going to be using Coffee just for easy navigation within Drupal, admin toolbar, because I find it really annoying to use a site without admin toolbar for some reason. And then obviously we're going to be using the Lingotek module as well. If you're trying to follow along and you need helpful links, I've set up a URL with all of the resources that I'm going to be using. You can find that. It's live right now, johnpicozzi.com/nerdsummit-2018. So if you need the commands that I'm running on the command line or want to see the links to the modules I'm using, all that stuff can be found on that page. And I figured we'd start off with a little bit of a quote from the famous Steve Jobs. When I said that I was going to do a live demo, people were like, that's crazy. And I found this quote that says, stay hungry and stay foolish. I said, that's pretty accurate. I'm feeling lucky, and I'm gonna educate people, and I'm gonna be a little bit foolish because I'm gonna do a live demo. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, we need one more Steve Jobs quote. And one more thing. The one more thing is we're gonna do a live demo. All right, so I'm going to be using the command line, and it looks really big up there. Let me see if I size this down a little bit. Is that more readable? Everybody see that as I start typing? Looks okay? All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our Drupal local environment set up. And we're going to do that using, as I said, the Composer Drupal project, which has a nifty command that we can use. So Get my notes here. We're just going to copy this right out of here. And when you go to the page about the Drupal Composer Drupal project, this command is actually right there. So we're working in a directory called Nerd Summit already. I'm going to call this nerd-0 because I already have a couple set up. And what's going to happen here is this is basically going to use the internet, go out, get all of our dependencies. You'll see it run through the Composer installation. It's going to go and pull out a bunch of stuff. Actually, most of this is, since I've already run it a couple of times, this is probably running from cache on my computer. And when you're done with this, as not to wait, I'll come back to this in a little bit, but you'll actually have a you'll have a project that looks like, window is killing me. So is this one. This. So when you are all done installing this, after you have configured MAMP, you will seriously. Resolution is killing me. There we go. All right, you'll have a window that looks like this. Basic Drupal installation. You'll be running through your terminal here. So we just ran that. Let's see if it did what it's supposed to do. But you'll see we have nerd0. And I think I might have quit that before we were in there, but we'll see. Within here, you'll see you have your, basically your whole project. Has all the dependencies that you would need for Drupal. If you go into the web folder, if it got that far in the process, you'll see in here that it has core, and it'll go through installing all of your core dependencies as well. And that'll get you to the base that we have here, which is, I'm missing the D in nerd quite a bit. Nerd. There we go. Something that looks like this. And if we cd into web, there's our fully installed Drupal site, right? So we basically, what do? We ran a composer command, it went, it pulled in, has our whole local environment. Now, there is some configuration that needs to go into MAMP to get MAMP to actually recognize it. But if you're using MAMP Pro, super easy. You can go through that in like maybe 2 minutes to be able to have a fully functional local setup and running. So the next step here is going to be the basics here. We're going to just set up Drupal. So we're going to run through the basic install. And we're just going to do standard install because we're going to stay very basic. I want you guys to be able to see what the core set of values is going to be. So this is nerd 1. So let's go nerd 1. Hopefully see if that works. I think it will. Database issues, of course. So this is basically going to go through the Drupal installation right now, and we're not going to sit and wait for this because we don't have time for that. And you know, internet can be slow. But once you're done basically configuring Drupal, you have a site that looks kind of like this, which is a little bit hard to see because it's kind of in full screen mode because of the projector. But we're going to log into our site. I think I'm already logged into here, right? So, John, password. Okay, so we're into Drupal. Now, that's taken about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and we have a fully functional Drupal site ready to go, ready for us to play with. The next steps are pretty straightforward. We're going to actually get into configuring, installing some modules and configuring our environment. So the next step here is going to be, we're going to actually run one more composer command. We're going to pull down some composer, some modules using our composer. And let's go back here to nerd 2. Cool. So we're going to run this command, and it's a little bit big and it's towards the bottom of the screen, but basically what it's doing is it's going to go out, it's going to get Lingotek, admin toolbar, and the coffee module for us. And again, those should be loading from cache, so it should be pretty quick. You'll see that it's done. Come on, be done. There we go. Keep going. Cool. So now that we have all of that, we can actually go into our module screen and turn on our modules. So we are actually just going to turn on the basic modules here that we need for the admin, which is going to close that. Yeah, much better. Admin. Turn on our admin toolbar, admin extras, and we're going to turn on coffee. So install. Has anybody used coffee here before? Yeah. Oh, Nate does. I know Steve does too, but he's being shy. So this is going to run. It's going to enable those modules for us. Looks like everything installed appropriately. I should have some drop downs here. One thing you have to watch out for, admin toolbar, sometimes you got to clear cache in order to get the admin toolbar to actually work. But once you get it working, you got the admin menus ready to go. So, oh, they turned that way. Got it. So next, we're going to actually go through enabling our translation. So in Drupal core, you actually have the ability to translate a bunch of content, obviously right out of core. You don't even need a service like Lingotek. Before we do that, though, let's enter some content just so we have something to actually translate. So I'm just going to create some basic pages here. Nothing too crazy. Add some content. Just create a basic page or two. Create a home page. How Nerd Summit translates. That'll be interesting. We're going to save that. So Node 1 is our home page. We're actually going to go and set this to our home page real quick. Save. All right, let's create two more pages so that way we have some content to actually translate. We'll create the About Me page. Add this to the main menu, main navigation, cool, go. And then one more page. Drupal and oof. All right. All right, so you can see in my nav here, I now have our navigation. Looks a little bit wonkier because of the screen resolution, but you get the idea. We got pages in our site. So next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to start translating this stuff and figure out what we need to do there. So first things first, we need to enable the modules for translation. So if I come in here and I type in translation, you'll notice a multilingual section comes up. We're going to pause here for a second and talk about these different modules. So the three modules that show up here are the core translation modules, the first three: configuration translation, content translation, and interface translation. The last one is obviously the Lingotek module. The first part of my talk, we're not going to install the Lingotek module because I want to show you what the core Drupal system can do out of the box. It's super robust. In reality, like I said, you can translate your whole site just by using core and Google Translate if you wanted to. Later on, we'll enable Lingotek and show you how to kind of send content back and forth from their system. But keep in mind, content translation and interface translation, those are two different sets of translation. And what I mean by that is content translation is basically translating all of your content that the user is going to see. Interface translation is going to translate your interface and the admin. So immediately you might think, oh, I don't need to enable interface translation because I don't want to translate my admin. I want my admin to stay in whatever language the site's set to. Well, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes your menus are actually included in your interface. Views are sometimes included in your interface. So you want to make sure that you're being aware of what you need to or what you want to translate and where it lives. So typically what I'll do is I'll just enable all three of these because it makes your life easier. It will allow you to find things a lot easier. As far as, hey, I need to translate this menu, or hey, I need to translate this view. How do I do it? So as those are translating, we're going to talk about a little bit about how translation is set up in Drupal 8. So is anybody familiar with translation in Drupal 7? Yeah. So in Drupal 7, there was this concept of node translation versus entity translation. And basically the difference there was with node translation in Drupal 8, you were basically taking a node and duplicating it for the multilingual variant, right? Entity translation in Drupal 7 was basically taking a field, translating it, and it lived within one node, right? In Drupal 8, they've actually done away with node translation because node translation, basically, if you think about it, you're duplicating all of your content. You have a page with 100 or a site with 100 pages on it, and you translate it into 3 languages. Now you got 300 pages on your site. That is not sustainable, right? With entity translation, you have one home or one node for all of your content that then is enabled to be translated per field based on any language that you select. So we've enabled these modules. It says, hey, you need to add at least one language to this site. And that's definitely something we need to do. So let's go ahead and enable a language for this site. Anybody have a language they wanna see translated?
German.
German. Man, there's always somebody that's like, German, go with German. It's the longest language. It's awesome, but super long. We actually usually do our tests for our themes in German because when you translate into German, words get super long and you'll know like, oh, we got to fix this because things are not going to work So what it's doing now is it's basically reading the German PO files for Drupal and loading all of the core translation that's been done. So this is an interesting fact. Drupal core is actually within the 90th percentile translated into a bunch of different languages. So you will see that without us doing much translation, if we were to translate the whole admin interface, you would actually see it in whichever language you selected. Because I don't read German, we're going to actually try to keep the admin in English today, just so I can get through this and show you guys what you need to see. So you'll see here that German is ready to go. It's not our default language, but it's ready to go, and that it's about 99.84% translated for interface translation. That means the admin is about almost 100% translated for German. Next, we're going to change our detection settings a little bit. So we have detection settings, and this is basically how your site knows what language it should be in. Here, let me close this so there's a little more breathing room there. And you have a multitude of detection settings here, right? Session, user, the browser's selected language. Typically, I like to go with the URL. And keeping the URL, if we keep the URL in English, it'll stay in English. If we switch over to German, it'll go to German. But you can actually set these differently if you turn on this checkbox here, I'll just enable it so you can see it. You can set them differently for your content versus your interface. So there are some bugs in Drupal 8.4. That had issues with interface translation. I don't know if they fixed those issues in 8.5, but you know what? We'll figure it out together here today. So I don't want to base my content translation on interface translation. I want to base it on the URL. And then as far as my interface goes, we're going to actually base that on, we'll do both the account administration and the URL, and we'll see how it works out. So now that I've gotten those settings saved, I now have to configure what content I want to be translated. So today we're going to translate our basic pages, and then we're also going to translate our menu items. So if I come back into Manage, I can go into Content, Language, and Translation. And you'll see here that, I'm going to close this so you can see it a little bit better. You have a list of content that you can translate. So I'm going to do content and custom menu links, because those are the two things I want to translate. Now you'll see if I come down this page that I have all of my options for translation listed here. And as I click through the checkboxes, it's going to actually increase the size of the page and show me more information. So let me just click on basic page for starters here. Now you'll see that I click content here. I have my content down below, and now it's showing me every field on that piece of content that could be translated. Again, this is a huge departure in UI from Drupal 7. Before in Drupal 7, you basically had to go to every content type, go to every field, and say, yes, I want to translate this, enable translation, enable translation, enable translation. And that was time consuming. This, so much easier. So I can now go through these fields and say, you know what, published, no, title, yes, authored on, authored by, no, 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 body, yes. Okay, perfect. And then I can go do the same thing for my custom links. My custom links, I really just want the title translated, right? So we're just going to pretend we're translating our whole front end, not so much our back end or any of the descriptions, anything like that. Hit save. Now, Drupal is like, hey, you have a language enabled. You just enabled content types for translation. Guess what? You're ready to go. Settings have successfully updated. If I go back to my site, it is still in English, which is fine. It's what we should expect. But if I now go to the About Me page, you'll notice I have this translation tab here. Minds are blown, right? And if I click on that translation tab, I have the ability to translate my content into German. Now, I can go in here, and as I said, I could say, all right, and you'll notice that my admin, I clearly didn't set my admin correctly because now my whole admin is in German. You can tweak it, and it'll work. It'll work, I promise. But now you can come in here and you can say, okay, well, I want to translate about me, right? So let's go to, is it translate.google.com? Good. So I'm going to do this about me. I'm going to choose German. Oh, man, German is right behind that thing I need to get to. There we go. So apparently that's how you say about me in German. Cool. I'm just going to highlight this. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to replace this. And I'm just going to do the title for now. We'll see once we can do the rest of the content as well. I'm going to save that. And you'll notice that it's now in German. Now, if you look at the URL, because we're doing URL-based detection, D has been added to the URL. That's the country code for Germany. So all of your German content is going to be your domain name /de/ whatever the path is to that piece of content. That's going to be true for any content that we translate. The menu, you'll notice the menu item hasn't been translated, but if I go into the menu, I'm going to assume this one's it. Hey, look at that, I was right. You can go in, you can actually do the same sort of thing. You can translate the menu right here. I'm going to take a quick second and try to get my admin into English, so that way we can read it a little bit better. And while I'm doing that, are there any questions? Go ahead.
What's the difference between config translation and interface translation?
So I think one is the actual translation system that allows you to basically translate the site, and the interface translation is solely the fact that the admin is translated.
Have you used config translation before? Have you had the opportunity? Have you used the configuration translation before?
No, I used like P7s.
Okay. I ended up using it on a personal, like on a project for our company, and I enabled it, and it doubled the configuration for everything. We exported it, and it was extremely unwieldy.
So yes, you will notice if you're doing config management through Drupal and you're exporting your configuration that a new folder appears in your configuration folder that is language specific, and it will save out all of your configuration in whichever languages you have enabled. So it does make your config larger. All right, so now you will notice that we are still in German as far as content, but our admin is still in English, which is good. We like that. And basically all I did was go into the detection settings for the interface and disable URL detection and just have it solely based on whatever I set in my admin profile. So if I were to go into my admin profile here real quick and hit edit, I have a language setting, administration pages language. If I set this to English, now it'll respect that when I log in. And as I'm cruising around the site, it should still keep the content in German, but it should allow me to, you'll notice this is the English version, but if I go to DE / oh, it didn't do it for me. Well, that's okay, because now we have the ability to look at this in an incognito window, and hopefully it works. Hey, look at that, works, perfect. So you may have to open the incognito window to do the translation if you really want like full English support in your admin. If you play with it a little bit, there is a way to get it to kind of do both. I also, like I said, for 8.4 did have to use some patches in order to get that to work 95% right. All right, so you could go through and translate your whole site like this. You could, painstakingly go and use Google Translate to do this, but I think it's far easier to use a tool like Lingotek. And truth be told, Lingotek isn't the only service out here that does this. It just happens to be the one that I'm familiar with. And what we're going to do right now is I'm basically going to do, say, 4 things. I'm going to install the Lingotek module. I'm going to configure a free Lingotek account, which is going to allow me to send translations to their server, have them translated by machine translation, and brought back down to my website. And then I'm going to show you what that looks like through the interface, through the admin, and how easy it is to do it. So first things first, let's install the module. And as I said, Lingotek does offer you a free account to do machine translation. If you wanted their actual full suite of translation services, you would have to buy a license and go through the process of paying them. One thing you will notice is you see that progress bar there. Now, every time you install a module, it's actually going to run that progress bar, which is pulling in the translations for that module into the interface translation system for Drupal. So you'll see that Lingotek was enabled. Everything looks good. And if we go under Manage here, you have this new translation with the Lingotek logo area. So let's go through here. And we're going to see if I can create a new Lingotek account. And we'll call it Nerd Summit. Holy moly. Resolution is absolutely killing me. And the fact there's no scroll bar on here is also killing me. So we'll see how well this works. Yeah, sure, that's how I spell my last name. All right. Is this like, can I move this? Oh my gosh, look at that. Out in the way up here. United States, new password. You're going to give me a hard time about my password, aren't you? So let's see, request an account. Not now. So now what it should do is it should sign me in, which it didn't, and redirect me to Lingotek or back into Drupal saying, hey, you're signed in, way to go. It did not do that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to log in with my Lingotek account.
Is it common that it won't create a new account for you?
So I've done this. Let's see, how many times have I done this? I've done this 2 times, and it the first time it created the account. The second time, it did not. So it's kind of a little bit of both. So let's go back to our admin. And luckily, this thing is killing me. I'm just going to connect to the Lingotek account that I already have set up. We'll hopefully see if that works. Shape Picozzi 1, copy Picozzi 1.
Is it creating like a new project in Lingotek for this? Or is it using like a project you already have?
So what'll happen is if you do the free account, it'll automatically create a project for you. Here, it's going to create a project for you as well, because this is just a kind of a base account that I have set up. So we'll see. So this is the Lingotek Dashboard. Tells you what languages you have enabled, and will tell you how much of your site is translated. You also have a little bit of analytics. These are just general analytics. They're not really specific to your site. It just tells you kind of like, hey, if you were to have these many languages enabled, you'd be able to get this much more reach. Somebody on the marketing team was like, yeah, do that. It'll be a good idea. So we're going to actually go ahead, and if I check this button, no, I don't want to remove German. If I go into my content area here, so you have to enable Lingotek for the desired content. So if I go into settings, I can actually walk through which content I want to set up. So we're going to come in here, and we're going to do my basic page, because I definitely want that. We're going to select. Now, this might seem like you're duplicating efforts, right? Because you already did this in Drupal. But what Lingotek does is it works off of the Drupal translation system. So you're doing it in Drupal, and Drupal's saying, okay, you want to translate these fields, but then you also need to tell Lingotek what you want to send up to their service. So this is a little bit of double work, but it's for kind of a different reason.
So do I understand this, that Lingotek, I can take, if I want to do the articles myself, but not connecting to Lingotek, I can be doing that on the Drupal 8 side.
Yes.
And then have, like you have the basic page going into it.
Correct. So now you'll see, if I go back to the content tab, that I have my 3 basic pages. It says that About Me has already been translated into German, because you'll remember I did that manually through the Drupal admin. Now, here's where the magic happens. If I select these and I say update source, or update source for translation, this is going to send all my translations, going to package it up and send it up to Lingotek for translation. Now you'll notice down here, we only have 1 language enabled, but you'll see some changes in the admin, right? So you see these orange boxes. If you hover over them, they actually give you information about what they mean. Oh, I just clicked on that. So you'll see this one turned to green when I clicked on it. But basically what it does is it says source importing. That means it's importing the source up to Lingotek to be translated. Now I clicked on that first one, and that means that it's been uploaded. So now what Lingotek is doing is it's crunching through your content. It's saying like, hey, this has got to be translated. So if I click this again, it's working on it. Let me see. And you can also do check update on different items. So if I check the status here has been updated. You'll see here that the translation, if I click here, it'll actually open up and it'll say, okay, this has been uploaded. It's in progress. It's in German. It's working on it. And you can just we can kind of fast track these. So we can check upload progress one more time on all of these and see if it uploads the progress for me. All right. So you'll see now that this is actually ready for download. So if I select all these and I go to, you can run through, I can download this right here. I'm going to download this one so we can see it. All right, so when you see green all the way through, that's really what you're looking for. And I can quickly just click through these and they'll go through the different steps. See if I can. All right, so there we go. So now if I download all, so this is very like pretty easy, right? We're clicking a couple buttons, we're clicking them a couple of times to get it to do what we want it to do. And now we have green all across the board. It says everything's translated, right? So if we go into our window here and we're looking at this site, refresh, you'll notice now that my content is completely in German, right? And I don't read German, but if any of you do, I would imagine this is translated fairly well. On the Lingotek side, I believe it's using Microsoft Translate. But you'll notice our menu items still aren't translated, right? Well, in Lingotek, menu items are actually config items. So you'll see you have content here. That's going to be all your nodes. Config items are going to be your menu items. So you'll see here that if I filter this down, I can filter this down to menus specifically. And you'll see that main navigation is here. If I click this and I upload it, it's going to go up. And then we can go through the translation process the same way we did for content. Everything will be translated. So I have that same problem. Don't worry about it. Happens to me all the time. It's the worst when you're on a conference call. But in the interest of time, I've got about 5 minutes for questions. So I want to open it up for anybody that might have questions.
Okay, so you're saying this Lingotek uses Microsoft Translate. Now, is there, I only did this in Drupal 7, never did in Drupal 8, but is there a way to go back and have like a German proofreader go through and correct things like, put atmosphere in the tire and stuff like that?
Yes. So you actually, through the free account with Lingotek, I don't think you have access to your dashboard anymore where you can update the translation, but you could have them do it directly in Drupal. So if you did the whole Lingotek translation, you could, in Drupal, have them go in and adjust things. If you wanted to use Lingotek's paid service, they have a full dashboard where you can go in, you can give your translator access to their system, their translation management system, and they can go in and they can walk it through a bunch of different steps in a process. So when it first goes up to Lingotek, it gets machine translated, and then it goes into translator review, where if you're paying for the service, you can have a translator review it and translate anything additional that was not translated right there through their translation management system. Work all the way to the end, completing the translation, and then once that's complete, it comes back down to Drupal, fully translated.
Also, if you're working on a custom module, is there a way to like check as you work whether or not it's compatible with Lingotek?
So here's the thing. If you're building your module to be compatible with the Drupal translation system, it's going to be compatible with Lingotek, because all Lingotek is doing is looking at what's available in the Drupal translation system currently.
I don't know if you've done any migrations from 7 to 8 with Lingotek, but we're kind of working on something. All the translations done in 7, figure 8, the way we want it to be, and we should be just able to upload and download translations still up.
So here's the thing. Lingotek, I have not done that. I'm actually looking at doing that this year. But to be fair, Lingotek kind of has you back in this way because they have a translation vault. So every term, if you're paying for a Lingotek account, every term that you translate is stored in the vault. So no matter what site you're using Lingotek on to translate, if you're sending up that word and that word's in your vault, it's going to go through the vault to translate it. And then when it's ready, it'll come back down to Drupal. So you don't really have to worry so much about, do I have to migrate the content? Because all you do with your new Drupal 8 site is put the content in the way you want it, set up Lingotek, have it upload it to their service. Your translation vault has all your terms stored in it. It'll go through, translate what it can. It can go through to your actual translator or through machine translation as well. And then once it's ready, it'll download from the TMS right into Drupal.
So in theory,
I was just wondering if you have heard of any issues and stuff with
I would say in actuality, I think the the Drupal 8 version of the Lingotek module, for me, feels a little bit more stable in my interactions with it than the Drupal 7 version. I've used both. I've used Drupal 7 pretty extensively. And I feel like at least this interface and this the speed of the Drupal 8 version is better.
Pain with 7, but we gather 8 is basically much better.
Yeah, I think you'll probably be much happier with it. Plus, the translation system in Drupal 8 is a lot better than it was in 7.
So if you were to say go back and change translation, will Lingotek automatically update its file? Or do you have to like manually say change it?
So you can set what's called a workflow. And the workflow will allow you to automatically upload, automatically download, or you can do a manual upload, automatic download. Typically, I recommend a manual upload and automatic download, because if you're working on a piece of content and you're updating it, and then you go to look at it, and then you go back to update it again, basically each time it's going to try to send that content up. It's a lot easier to go in and say like, oh, I updated this blog post 20 times, and I'm done with it now. Let me send it up for translation and then have it do its translation and then automatically download whenever it's ready. That makes sense? Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Well, if you are looking for me, you can find me at Unthink, right down in Providence, Rhode Island. And I had a really nice thank you slide, but now I can't find it. Hey, there it is. Found it. Don't worry, guys. Got it. There it is. That's me. Thanks for your time.
Horizontal DevOps. It's so good. The horizontal DevOps stuff is so